Welcome to the Exodus Companies podcast. My name is Jared. I am the CEO and founder of the Exodus Companies. This is a movement from culture to build community. In our episodes of Speaking to Culture, I connect you with prominent people in the world around us who have had a profound impact on people in their everyday lives. And I know that it might seem that the people that I connect you with on the outside might look like some sort of superhero, or that they have some superhuman traits that maybe you feel like you don't possess. But the whole purpose of this episode series of Speaking to Culture is to show you that the people that are changing culture for the better are often just normal people like you and I. And today, my guest's name is John Carughi, aka Rughi. Some of you know him as the Weapon Snatcher, and we'll get into why he is called that. But back in the COVID era and all of the riots up in the Pacific Northwest, Rughi made some decisions that ultimately got him a lot of coverage on the news, and he made a decision to make the world around him a better place. But this episode is not just about what he has done. It is about who he is and where he is headed on his journey. So before I get into that episode, guys, a few housekeeping items. If you want to support us at the Exodus Companies, the best way to do that is to consider purchasing some of our apparel. Check out exoduscompanies.com, and you will also find all of our different brands that we own and operate. So if you want to show us some support, you want to help us monetarily, you can do that by purchasing any of our products. It helps us to be able to afford to connect you to people like John and other people inside of our circle to help teach you how to have a more profound impact on the people around you. And if you can't do that right now, I totally understand. One way you can pay it forward is to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you're subscribed to our podcast. Make sure you are paying it forward. When you like what we are putting out, when you think that the message needs to be heard, we rely on you to spread that message far and wide. So follow us on Instagram, like all of our content, make sure you're sharing that in the DMs, and then make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel. Guys, without further ado, I'm excited to get into this episode of Speaking to Culture. So, okay, the way that this is going to go, it's a dangerous podcast, so I do have some safety glasses that I need you to put on. So here, I'm going to toss these over to you. All right, so you're going to put your safety glasses on. I'm going to put my safety glasses on. Actually, I'm going to stand up real quick. Give me a second. So, I know that you're also into long range shooting. So what I did is I went out and I purchased a rifle for you. So now this is 177 caliber, so it's pretty dangerous. It is air, so variable pump depending on the speed that you'd like, but that's for you as well.
Thanks, man. I haven't shot one of these since I was a kid.
So the other thing that you need for that is ammo.
Oh, man.
So, so I also got you some pellets. Here we go. And some of these BBs.
Oh, man.
So how's it feel to be fully loaded now?
Dangerous.
Dangerous. Okay, we don't actually have to have the safety glasses on. Just a
my
heads
safe
up.
Space now.
But yeah, no, that's just a fun little gift I wanted to throw at you as a thank you for coming out here and recording with us. But
you know what's funny is I actually grew up with that same model.
Yeah.
And they shoot both pellets and BBs. I was never allowed to shoot BBs because they bounce back.
Yeah.
I was only allowed to shoot the pellets because they mush and drop.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. And I did not use iPro.
So I'm pretty sure that it holds about 1,000 BBs in there too. You just fill the stock. You can fill the stock and anyway. But yeah, it's funny, you know, thinking back to when I was young, I had a BB gun just like that. And there's a lot that can be learned just from having some exposure to a gun like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, so John, it's good to have you here.
Thanks for having me, man. Yeah.
Real quick at the beginning here, I think it's worthwhile to just kind of tell people where they can find you and kind of, you know, what does your world on social media kind of look like?
Oh, man. I think with a lot of people, it's a cluster. No, so you can find me on Instagram. You can type in Weapon Snatcher. It'll pop up. I got 2 of those, one of my backup. And then YouTube's the same thing, Weapon Snatcher, and same with the website, weaponsnatcher.com. You can find me on all those. And they're all interlinked, so if you find one, you can find the others. So
yeah.
If you see one that says Shooter Rughi, that's it.
Nice. So talk about that a little bit. I do want to spend a couple minutes on this because I want to have you explain why you named your Instagram page that. So give us the quick 30,000. Like you couldn't expect to get on the podcast without talking about it a little bit.
Yeah, no.
There's so much more that I want to dive into, but give us the rundown.
2020 Seattle riots after George Floyd. I was working security, running some EP for EP, Executive Protection, for those of you who don't know, for a news crew. And a viral video of me was caught and went worldwide. Some Antifa cats took some AR-15s out of some police officers' vehicles that were on fire. The first rifle one of the guys took, he fired 4 rounds. I ran up and I took that from him, disarmed it, and brought it back. And then a few minutes later, the video that went viral was me taking another one and clearing it out. And yeah, so that blew up, and it all went over to my social media, and I just figured, hey, I'm an infantryman, take the advantage, and press it. So then that's why the Weapon Snatcher moniker is like, people were trying to name me other things, which we talked about, and it was like, I gotta control this a little bit so it doesn't get out of hand.
Yeah, so I'd made a joke to you because we've been hanging out the last day and a half. Made a joke because like you woke up on that morning and you thought, hey, today's the day I'm going to just go grab some AR-15s for people, right?
Well, what's funny about that is it took me about like 6 to 8 months after the incident to realize that I had taken rifles in that exact manner, like grabbing it right there and everything from people before, but they were from Marines, the guys I was teaching, and they do something unsafe. And I think having that instruction background and being around it and being, I'm not going to say comfortable, but confident, and then being able to see intuitively what people might be doing with that firearm that's unsafe is what really helped out in that situation. But I was spun up for work the day prior before that, but I didn't get called in, so I was already packed up and ready to go, and then I got the call, and I was maybe 40 minutes into that work day, and that happened.
Wow. Yeah. So it had just kicked off. So 2020 is a crazy time period. I think
the dark year.
Yeah, I really think that's a great way to describe it, because so much shifted in our society throughout that entire year. Yeah. I look at it as a year, honestly, the past 3 years, and we're going to dive into this past year because I want to talk to you about some things, but it just was this chaotic, I don't even know, it just like a dark age of our society where everybody that even had an ounce of care for for other people or wanted to engage in community, all of a sudden it felt like that was just gone.
I'm taking my toilet paper, you're not getting any.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we think about all the examples of that we saw, just from how people were talking in the media to how people were interacting with each other on the streets to, people that disagreed with each other that before would be like, hey, that's cool, whatever, that dude just thinks different. And now it's this just chaotic culture. So what's your analysis? Like, what did we lose through 2020?
Man. So I think 2020, not just with, Rona and all that, was a big deal because we're also coming on a tail end of like 20 plus years of warfare as a country. Mm-hmm. We had this thing, whether you were for it or not, that our country was engaged in on large scale. And then we're coming to the tail end of it, and you have an entire generation that grew up with that, and then then you get told you can't go to work, you got to stay indoors, this stuff's happening, you can't do this, mask up, germs are the danger. And it's like, how do you take a generation that has grown up with something like that and grown up in a time of our history, and I mean like world history when you look at it on a big scale, where this isn't the Victorian era. Yeah. You look at all the advertisements, it's all sex, right? Mm-hmm. So it's so desensitized to seeing stuff like that, and now you're getting told that you can't do this, you can't do that on large scale. So like, I'm not going to speak to any other city other than the one that I was in, but what I saw was a lot of people that were already struggling, and then struggling harder through Rona to even provide. And you're dealing with millions of people in a city, and then all it takes is one spark, right? And that happened to be the George Floyd incident, which was, I think most people agree, pretty messed up.
Yeah.
And regardless of what side you fall on. But I do think that it was a completely wrong reaction for our nation. But then again, I mean, where was it going to go? You know, it's not a utopia. It's never going to be. Just like you're always going to constantly be fighting to make it better, but it's never going to be better. That's why I think in our Constitution, a more perfect union is never going to be perfect. So having that situation pop off the way it did, and with our nation, and then everyone at each other's throats, like more couples in history started going into therapy. Like now they're slammed together in the same house. They're not going off on their normal day-to-day lives, stuff like that. And you're dealing with those kind of issues, and that just comes to a head. And like I mentioned, was I think 2022 is a snapback from that.
Yeah.
Like, it's all coming right back around. I think it's a dangerous time, and I think it's a time of a lot of change, but we need to control, and I don't mean we as in you or I, but we as a people need to control where that change goes.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, change is friction. Friction is explosive.
One thing I noticed about you, just from the interaction, obviously, this weekend, but also just watching your page, is you're very analytical of how you carry yourself, how you see the world. You know, for not even just talking about how you see the world, but you're shooting, you analyze things. Where did you pick up that trait?
Oh, man.
Because even what you just did with explaining how you grabbed the rifle, how you've done that before, like having that level of self-awareness to say, I probably, I'm putting words in your mouth, correct me if I'm wrong, but I reacted in this way because I've also done that before. I have some experience, in making a situation safe. But having that level of self-awareness is pretty impressive.
There's not a small answer to that, just to warn you before I dive into it.
No, I want to dive in. Let's dive there.
When I was I was about to turn 18, 17, something like that. My parents got in a divorce, and it was a pretty messy one. My father was contracting in the Middle East since 2004. So I was living and being raised by my mother. My mother is not a good person. She's controlling, she's manipulative, she's a thief, she's a liar. And the reason why this all came to a head was I was living at home by myself at one point, and we had no money because my mother wasn't there to give us money because it came from my dad overseas, and she had controlled the flow of information to him. And then I sent him an email. I was like, I haven't seen her in weeks, got no money, got no gas. I'm shooting rabbits in the yard for food. Right?
Wow.
So within days, he was home, like something's up. Come to find out, so I grew up with an antique firearm collection. My grandfather used to be the president of the Houston Gun Collectors Association down in Texas. My dad grew up with that, and that's getting passed to me. Well, it turned out her and my two half-brothers have stole and pawned a majority of it. So it was like something like $1.5 million in firearms gone.
Wow.
So divorce comes, and I'm my dad's only son. And I didn't know about any of this going on because I would have said something.
Yeah.
So it comes down to, I basically dropped out of school. My dad, it worked in a triangle, right? If he was about to lose a house because of all this, she hadn't been paying the mortgage. If he would have lost a house, he would have lost his clearance. If he lost his clearance, lost his job. Loses his job, can't pay for the house, can't do the divorce, right? So he had to go back to work to be able to do everything, so I stayed home. I hit an identity crisis in this period of time. I started to realize my nature was from my father. I'm more like him than anything, thank goodness, too. But my nurture was from my mother. So I started to realize, she's done all these things, and those are things I don't like. Okay, but these are problems that I'm seeing in my own life. Why don't I like friend A talking to friend B? We're best friends, but I don't like them talking, and it clicked.
Yeah.
I told them something different. And when they talk, they figure that out. I'm in trouble. I started noticing things like that I never realized. And it was because of how I was being raised. So I was like, I don't want to be that. So I found examples, whether it be from fiction or nonfiction, of characters or people that I could look up to. My father being one of them. Tarzan. Love the book series. Favorite one, just going to say. Tattoo on the side was another, right? So different things like that. And I would write down, I call it the box of me. I have a little wood box, and every time I'd find a line of dialogue that I'd love, where it just sounded good or had a good moral behind it, I'd write it down, throw it in there, a good quote, I'd throw it in there, something that really resonated.
What age is this?
17, 18,
okay,
going
so
into 19.
You're a young man.
Yeah, dude. I had to figure a lot of it out. And through that, I had to constantly build the habit. So the thing that I needed to find something as a guiding rod, and that was honesty. So if I'm honest with everyone around me, I trap myself into that honesty, and I can't manipulate my way out of it. And I don't want to, but it was a way for me to trip myself into being a better person. So if I'm honest with everyone, including myself, that's where it comes from. It gets me to where I want to be. But I have to analyze everything I do so that I don't fall into those traits that I don't want, that I don't like. So then it gets into, I'm in the Marine Corps and I start instructing and everything, and I'm looking at how it's all going, and I'm watching the different positions, and I'm like, okay, now I'm just seeing pyramids. I'm seeing triangles in every position, and I start doing that. But then one thing that really unlocked more understanding, shameless plug for him, but was a modern day sniper. I did one of Kalen Wojcik's classes, and he looks at things more in depth than I do, so it just unlocked more. So I was like, okay, so what I do to myself using my intuition and try to have that intelligence on how I am and relay that into people around me because of my character type, I put that into different situations, whether it be a political or especially shooting, right, to get better, stuff like that. And it started carrying on all throughout life. But it's gotten me into a lot of trouble before too. A lot of people can't handle being around that, and it's hard not to do it accidentally or anything. So
was that almost like a protective measure? That was something you're analyzing yourself. You're saying, hey, I see these traits in myself and I don't necessarily like what I'm seeing. So now you're creating the ability to be self-aware so that you can make an alteration. Yeah.
So it's like, this is kind of a difficult thing to explain, but say you do a mannerism that feels out of character for you, right? And if you think, oh, what was I thinking or feeling when I did that? And you remember that, okay, then that was a feeling or a thought that was a little outside of my realm of what I'm normally feeling or thinking. And then you pair it with that mannerism. And then say down the road, a week, 2 years, whatever time, you see someone do that same mannerism and you look at their face, you can pretty generally, generally accurately, however you want to say it, deduce that person probably had some feeling or thought similar to what you did. Because we're humans. A lot of us are pretty much the same. Yes, culture and all that has an effect, but you can, through introspection, you can tap into the world around you. And to me, that's always been a very important thing because I don't want to fall into the habits or the characteristics that I was raised with. So I have to do this all the time to keep myself in check. And you know what? The last 2.5 years, I haven't. Last 2.5 years went bad. So, and I realized coming into the situation I am now that to keep my own life safe, I have to do it regardless because I don't want to be that person.
Yeah. No, that's powerful. And that's something that I think it's probably fair to say that in general, our society probably isn't as aware of ourselves as we should be.
You can look around. I do this all the time. Wherever you are, look around and just watch people, and you will see how unaware they are of themselves in this situation. So like, you think about like video, right? I never got into video before 2020, but I was always interested in how I appeared on video. But I knew it wasn't in a vain way. I just didn't know how to explain it at the time. But no, that's literally the same thing I'm talking about. I am viewing myself and I know what I'm thinking in that time. And I'm seeing my mannerisms and how they come across. Okay, that is how people are viewing me. Maybe there's something in there through introspection I can use to figure out how other people are thinking or feeling.
Yeah, and it's a powerful thing about being on camera. It's hard in the rest of your life to see yourself in an unfiltered way.
Yeah.
And when you're on camera, it's the craziest thing. And people often make the comment, they'll say, oh, I feel so weird when I look at myself on camera. I sound so weird or I talk so strange. And the reality is that's how you talk.
Yeah. It's like hearing your voice on a voicemail. It's like, oh, I sound like that? Like, you sound different in your head, right? And the only other time besides video you really have that is say you have a friend, a significant other, or a random person that says, hey, you did this, or you acted this way. And you're like, no, I didn't. Like, because you know your intent, you feel your intent behind it, you wouldn't think you'd put that out there. But sometimes you do and you don't realize it. Or sometimes you say things and they come across a way that you did not intend when you have nothing but goodness in your heart.
Yeah.
And Like these are things that I find very important because, so I started school for international relations and global studies, or international relations and global security, excuse me. And the thing I find so fascinating about it is all the problems you look at globally between different nations, you can look at them in the same way in a single individual. And you can help one to unlock the other, just like shooting on different platforms. And when you start doing that and everything, you just start seeing things like, holy crap, like there's just so many layers going on.
So dive into that a little bit. I mean, look at it from the collective and then dive into it individually, because one thing that I know is true, people think that their individual actions don't change the world around you. Oh man,
they do.
So to unpack that, I want to hear a little bit more about that.
Well, so like I think I said it earlier today or something. One of the most amazing things that I have recognized about after the Seattle incident with me is getting DMs all the time, right? I've gotten several like, hey, this happened. I was able to draw down on someone and keep calm, cool, and collected. And I was able to solve the situation without any lives injured or taken, or I was able to calmly assess the situation and provide medical aid and get someone there. And it was because of your influence, because of your example or the things you said. That is bar none the most amazing thing, because you know what happened when I did my situation? I messaged Travis Haley. I messaged a few other people like, dude, it was your example, your thing. Like, I was that guy. I am that guy. So when you analyze things like that and you just take that, you don't know how far the ripples will go.
Yeah.
You have no idea. And I think the same thing about shooting. I think the same thing about photography. Heck, I walked in the door the other day and within 10 minutes, boom, now you're realizing you can hook up your trigger cam to the monitor, right? So you have to step outside that realm and think that maybe I don't know everything. Probably don't. I'm probably not seeing the situation for how it is. And it's a give and take, because I look at it like wisdom, right? The word wisdom, the definition of wisdom is knowledge and experience followed by good judgment, right? Because you and I can have the same knowledge, the same experience, but our judgment can lead us to two different outcomes. But you cannot yourself claim that you are wise, because then you are unwise.
Right.
It is something that need be lay upon you, right? Mm-hmm. So if you sit there and you look back at a situation saying, I'm all seeing and I see everything that's going on, well, you're not seeing what's going on with you, because that was hubris, that was arrogance, that was ego, right? Those are all the things that someone that is seeing everything wouldn't do. Yeah. So it cuts both ways.
And that's fascinating, because again, I see this recurring theme with you that you're so aware, or you're trying to be aware and trying to become more aware of the situations around you and who you are as a person, to the point where you would analyze the intentions of your own thought or something you would say.
So I have to. I recently just moved out here to the East Coast from the West Coast. I haven't put this out there on video yet, but I felt like it was the beginning of last year. It was a little like a month or so after SHOT Show, for circumstances I'm going to leave out, but I fell into really bad depression. Like, I stopped doing my YouTube channel. I put a lot off, everything. And it got to the point so bad, it's like, because of the situation that's going on, like, I had to tear down myself completely. Well, I didn't, but myself was torn down completely. Any kind of confidence, any kind of work I had done to me, because I was being told I was one thing, or one of several things. I'm like, I don't think I am, but I don't know everything. Like, and this is where I say it cuts both ways, is if you allow yourself to go down there and you tear away all that work you've done and see what's really down into the core, like, it can be pretty shitty. Like, it can be actually really terrible. So that's where, like I mentioned earlier, that box of me really kept me straight, because that was like, I was 23. Shoot, that was like 10 years ago, 11 years ago, right? I was able to refer back to that, like, hey, who am I, and what in this box of me still, it says this is me. Do these things still resonate? Are these things I still believe in? Well, yeah, but I can't see everything with myself, and I have to trust that those in my life are going to tell me honestly, kindly, from a good place in their heart, from good intent, that, hey man, this is what this came across as. Hey, this is what this felt like. And and that's because it got to a point where couple years ago that I stopped looking into myself, stopped analyzing my emotions. And what happened was I got congested emotionally. And I didn't know it because I wasn't going there.
Yeah.
And it all came to a head. And when all that came up and out, it was coming out over months, but I don't feel emotionally congested anymore. And that's great. But holy damn, the work that had to happen, the pain, the struggle that I had to go through. It's really, really important that you talk about it. So I just had a conversation with a good friend of mine about, he's had quite a few friends commit suicide, and I've had quite a few friends commit suicide. And we're talking about, like, and this is unfortunately a common story, that a lot of people that commit suicide, no one ever realized. Like, the person looked happy, they looked fine, they were doing great, right? That's the common story, because that person's trying to be happy, they're trying to do great, they're trying to improve their life, but you don't see what's going on behind closed doors. They're not saying anything, they're not saying help. So me, the way I looked at it through all this is, I was told by one of my best friends in life, I've known her for like 15 years, she goes, when you're feeling these things, you have a tendency to isolate and hibernate. I'm like, yeah. So then it occurred to me, like, a lot of people go down this road and it goes that way. I'm feeling that low. I'm feeling like that's the only thing that's going to help. So what do I need to do? I need to at least talk about it. Find my guiding rod and talk and be truthful. So when I feel like I don't want to talk, I call someone, right? And I'm just going to say that truth so that I don't have two separate. I'm not feeling this and I'm not living this. So my life may be looking great, but I'm feeling this. I said, no, I'm going to put those two things in sync. And because both can be true. Like, my life is improving in other ways, but the emotional side is still very difficult. But I keep them in line so that I myself am not living two realities. And I don't feel those dark things as much or as powerfully anymore.
And did you naturally have people to lean on through that? Like, talk about that a little bit, because the other thing too, you talk about isolation, hibernation. I share similar traits where on the surface, if somebody would look at what I do, they'd say, you're definitely extroverted.
Same.
I am introverted as heck.
Yeah. I'm going to pass out tomorrow for like a week. No. So that was one of the things that I didn't realize. And it was said to me by someone very dear to my heart, and always will be, that, the first things you need to do when you realize that you're depressed is figure out the signs of you falling deeper. It's like, okay, that's smart. And then the second step is find those things that help you counteract that and just do them all the time. So I was like, okay, what are those two things? Well, the first one was, when I am depressed, I want to sleep. I am fatigued. I am tired. Like, I could sleep for 15 hours, wake up, and just be exhausted still. But obviously that's not a good thing, right? And then the second thing is, I don't take care of myself. I don't even realize it. And that sucks, because I'm a person who likes to be very clean, but I don't realize it. So it's like, when those two things happen, it's like, oh, okay, I'm starting to feel that way, and I'm not realizing. I feel like I'm going down. So now I'll do, if I'm feeling tired, like I get off work and I just want to go to bed, like immediately, I'll go out. I'll go to town, I'll take photos, take video, like I'll just do whatever to kill the time, and I'll try to do it creatively to keep that going. And I'll set a clock, like, hey, I need to, have me time to take care of me physically, however, at this time. And I also need to set aside time to be present with those emotions. Like, the way I look at it is, like, not necessarily another person, but I can't let those emotions lead me. I can't let them push me wherever they want to go. I have to, like a good friend, keep them beside me, right? Like, hey, well, you saw me on the phone earlier, right?
Yeah,
so I was like, hey, I'm going to give you the time that you need when I can. Right now might not be the best time. But when I can, you and we're going to cuddle up and bawl together, just let it all out, because I need to let that through my body instead of becoming emotionally congested.
How do you balance the boundaries of that? An example is, somebody calls you and, you're obviously going through your life. You're going through your own stuff. We all are. But it seems like you also have a very caring personality where other people can lean on you at the same time.
That's actually, I see what you're saying. It's a very hard thing to do, because that's actually been a huge problem for me. It is easier to, I've found at least, it is easier to take care of others than yourself. Because with others, you have that outside view of, oh, I see your situation, bro. The situation's easy, here's the fix, right? Whereas when it's you and you're in it, well, now you have all that muddy water of emotion between it. It makes it difficult. So one reason why I left the East or the West Coast to come to the East Coast, it was pointed out to me that, hey, Rughi, there's no one in your life you don't have to take care of. This person, this person, this person. They started naming off 2 hands full of people. I was like, holy crap, like that's too many people. As much as I love them and will, it also means I'm not taking care of myself.
Right.
So I left, right? I went to a place, started working, got my own place to live by myself. And what I found is I have so much other time now to just be concerned for myself. But it opened up a new vulnerability. And that was a little terrifying. So balancing it is like shooting, right? When I was talking about earlier on the range, is this emotional intelligence. You have to recognize in that moment. So he calls me, I can hear in his voice. I'm talking about my brother. Hey, something's going on. I was like, he asked me if I'm busy. I'm like, yeah, but what is going on? Like, I got a little time. Let's figure this out. And there's always going to be those ones closest to my heart I'm going to do that for. But you have to, knowing where to draw the line or where it needs to, like, I can't right now, but I'm going to do this first thing I get the chance. Also comes down to respect between the two individuals and trust. It's like, I know you, I know you got me. If you say you can't right now, I trust you, right? So that can be very difficult to navigate, especially when people are, they're in a flurry. I just need to get this done now. And it's like, I'm speaking from my own experience. I'm not saying I got any of this knocked down, right? But it can be very difficult at times. And what I've learned too is I hate the word boundaries, but boundaries are so important. There are things in my life that have always been a reoccurring issue with significant others, and I've realized that it's come down to boundaries. Like, I have boundaries with these things, and I also need to set them for others, but also I need to have boundaries with myself. And the way I relate to it is, if we were to play a game, but I don't give us rules to the game, we're probably going to sit here just twirling our thumbs because we got nothing to do. But the second I put a guideline in there, it's like, oh, now I can interact. Now I know where my left and right lateral limit is. That's what you have to do with yourself, and that's what those boundaries are.
And I think people are worried too sometimes that having those boundaries or creating those boundaries could potentially limit them in some capacity or potentially restrict them, you know what I mean, from, I don't know, any number of things, being willing or able to help somebody, or maybe restricting letting somebody come into your circle might leave a void in some other way, shape, or form. I don't know. I feel like we have some confusion.
I think that makes me think of, so there's a philosophical concept, hedonist. Hedonist, if I remember right, if you're going to quote me, go ahead. I know the general concept. It basically means you believe in being able to do whatever you feel like you want to do. And you believe in whatever pleasure you want to seek, and that's fine. My problem has always been like that. Like, I think that in some areas that's okay, but having the discipline to back off. So that goes into stoicism. Like, you need to have the discipline in moderation. But being able to, like, I have different experiences that elaborate upon this I'm not going to get into, but basically saying that I feel like I agree with you right now, make a decision, knock it out, done. The next day, oh, I changed my mind, that's not going to happen, I'm going to do something else, right? Okay, well, you set a boundary with integrity and honor by saying you're going to do this. Just because you feel like it doesn't mean you get to change it the next day. But there's a lot of people, especially in this day and age, because there's no discipline, there's no integrity, there's no honor being taught and being instilled, that believe that that is okay. And they do it in every facet of life. And I've been caught, I catch myself doing it at times too. Like, it's hard to be disciplined. A lot of people say it's motivation. Like, no, it's discipline.
Yeah.
Like,
that's a very different thing. And I think it was this past year that I really started to consciously think about the difference between that, discipline versus motivation. It's kind of funny because we actually just did a podcast on this probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, talking about this exact topic, where people like to get motivated because it feels good. Motivation is sort of this feeling that you get. And I remember at the beginning of our business journey with TA Targets, I sought a lot of motivation at the beginning because motivation, and I don't think motivation is necessarily an inherently bad thing. I think it can be a tool that can be like when you light a match and you get that immediate spark and that flame and it can burn. But what does a match do? It burns out very quickly. And it can do some work, but that initial spark has to be applied to something else. And if you're going to take motivation, you need to be ready to take the next step, which is discipline. And I think this last year for me has just been that year of realizing in my life that there's a lot of areas that I lack discipline. Yeah. And it's really hard to look at yourself and say, man, I'm really sucking at this.
That happened for me about a year and a half ago. I was like, what is going on with these certain aspects? And I was like, holy crap, like it's discipline. Like, and you would think being from Marine Corps and infantry and background, everything, you'd realize that, but I would venture to say until it truly hits you and you're like, holy F, like I really don't have discipline in all these different areas. And I don't. And so like, and that comes into boundaries too. Like one thing I'm trying to do is make sure like 3-4 times a week I go to yoga in the morning, hot yoga, because it helps with the mobility, physical and mental and emotional health. Like it helps with your nervous system and spread load those hard feelings to be able to process them and think clearly. And even though I know, and even though it feels really good to go and do that, it is still hard to get up and go do it.
And to your point too, the thing about discipline is, even if you've been taught, like take the Marine Corps, where the discipline aspect would have been hammered into you, making a conscious decision on your own in your own life outside of a structure is very different than being told you have to do this thing and then there's consequences of not doing it. I mean, there are consequences of not having discipline, but I think of raising my kids. So I'm trying to teach them discipline. And if they do a certain thing, there might be some consequences to that. But that's me essentially at this phase of their life, forcing them to accept the level of discipline. But once they go out on their own, they have to make a choice. Yeah. And so then making that discipline personal, that is a totally different beast.
And I think one of the best rewards of discipline that is very undervalued in the society we live in today because of instant gratification. You want food, go to fast food. You want whatever. Like we're all victims of it, and we're all aggressors in it. It's delayed gratification. Like discipline, a majority of times, its reward is the delayed gratification. You go to the gym for 6 months straight. Your body's going to get in shape in a year, right? You eat well. Say you don't go to the gym, but you just start eating well. It's going to take longer to see those rewards. You work at a business that you're trying to build. It's going to take years to grow that into something that you see in your head now. Like it's delayed gratification is undervalued. So like me with my business, I look at it and I have this image like I know what I want. But I'm also like, can we fucking get there already? Like, come on now. So I think that is a problem with our society, and it goes from society to the individual level. I mean, it all just spins the wheel, and it's really difficult to handle, especially when you either have your own personal BS to go on, and it's like I can't even see the outside world right now, or the outside world's so loud you can't see anything but.
And I feel like when our world around us lacks discipline in general, and every other moral or ethical value that we should have, honesty, integrity, whatever you want to define as having good culture, good work ethic, good morality. When we lack those things, we're prone to the chaos of, like we were just talking about, 2020. Yeah. You think about what people saw and went through had we applied more of this self-betterment, been in pursuit of a more excellent version of ourselves, we probably would have seen a different picture. Because, like, let's be real, there's been other instances of quote-unquote pandemics in the past. Yeah. Like, this is human history.
Yeah.
But it happened at different times with a different populace and a different level of integrity, I think, inside of a populace. And also, the other thing we have is talk about instant gratification. We have the instant gratification of social media in a way that just didn't exist back in the day too, which I love social media on one hand. I think that it's a powerful tool, but it gives people a mental instant gratification and a dopamine rush. And they can, like, all of these things that you can look at studies and see that it physically affects us. It's not just this mental.
It's meant to physically affect us.
Right.
It's meant to hit that cortex and make us feel good immediately.
Yeah.
I was talking to someone recently about so I've been around firearms my entire life, but I credit my first like formal training to firearms from John Plaster's book, The Ultimate Sniper, 2nd edition. Like thick book, nice and fat. I had everything you can imagine in there for its time, right? I was reading that thing in school. I got some funny looks, but that's where I learned a lot about it. Now you can just go online. Now you can just pull up your phone. Now it's all right there. Like and I found that book walking into a store and like, holy crap, that looks awesome. I'm going to buy it. And now you just go on your phone and you can find the most up-to-date type of shooting, the most up-to-date discipline in it, and just do it. Just copy and paste and knock it out.
So is that good or bad?
I think it's good and bad.
Yeah.
Like
it's funny how that works.
It's not black and white to me. I think it's good and bad. It's good, like, say I got a family member, a friend, whatever, they want to jump in and learn it. It's like, okay, man, I'm going to give you these videos, just save these, download them, take them out, and just walk through them as you go, right? That is awesome. There's nothing like that. Usually you'd have to find military manuals in the past to do something like that, and they're really cool looking old school sketches, right? Which some of them were in the book I was reading back then. Now you have 4K resolution on your phone, and people can just do it, but they take it for granted. Like all the stuff we did today, right? As awesome as it is, like it can be very much taken for granted. Like, oh, that's right there. I don't need to do that right now. I'll just hit save and go to it later.
Yeah.
And never get to it. And yeah.
It does change the whole fabric of our culture. And I'm with you. I see a huge benefit in the connectivity and the ability to connect to people and consume information, because I've been a direct recipient of it. I've benefited greatly from our community. Just take the firearms world, for example. I think back to 2013 to 2015, I would say, when firearm quote unquote culture on social media really started to take off. 2015 feels like a really big year for me, because that's when we started our business. And
those Magpul videos, man.
Yeah, going back to the old videos of when I think the entire premise of a quote unquote influencer, which I kind of cringe at that word, but like when that even started, that was a totally different landscape of what social media can be used for. And now you started to, looking at the benefit side, start to see people recording themselves. Yeah. And so a benefit of that is, oh man, we look really ridiculous. Like I'm drawing a pistol and you're ducking your head and doing all kinds of weird stuff and moving a lot and wasted movement. And now people are forced to analyze themselves. But on the flip side, the bad side of it is you can manipulate the image that you put out. You can massage the negative things out and just show the positives. And
integrity. That's where integrity needs to come in, right?
Yeah.
I've done some dumb stuff on video, like negligent discharge with my white light. I do that all the time. Yeah. So 100 Concepts, they got a little light cap thing. You saw them. I was like, well, that's done. Now I can be dumb all the time. I've had magazines drop out of my gun because I didn't fully insert them and I left them in there. Actually, one of the coolest things I think I've done, drew a pistol, go to shoot, mag fell out. I caught it as it was falling, inserted, racked, and fired. Yeah. There's authenticity that needs to be going in there. But also I think it's important, like we were talking about media purposes, it's important to recognize what is the intent of the video. So if I'm going to put out an instructional type video, I want it polished. Yeah. Because I want people to see the best example I can possibly provide so that they have the best example they can get. So do I really want my fuck-ups in there? No, and it has nothing to do with me being inauthentic. It's the purpose of this video is to give the best example possible. Yeah, and there's an intentionality behind that too, where you're exercising based on a set of criteria that is your ethics. You're saying I'm within my boundaries. There's a distinct difference between the old
Instagram method where everybody would just not even show hits or just blast away and the sub-second everything and just dumping rounds because it looked cool. And you know what? It's a free country, and there's a place for entertainment in our culture, and I think it's important to have entertainment, but also that integrity level is important. But if you're trying to be a professional, there's a time and place where you have to show the polished version. We do the same thing. We do the one take style videos often on the range. Those are the ones that'll show me messing up, because I also want people to know I'm a human. I'm on a journey just like every single other person, and you are too. And there is a value at some point in teaching people to expect a level of failure. Now, obviously, when firearms are involved, there's a certain level of failure we just can't accept, because the consequences of it are insane. So, the safety aspect, yes, there's certain things that there's a left-right boundary. It's black and white. But then there's a lot of gray area where, it might just be form or function, or
for the video just to look visually appealing.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but how is it being done? And I think the key thing behind that is a word we've already used a few times, and it's one I harp on in my weapon safety portion of the classes I teach, is intent. Your intent as a person is going to be the outcome of that firearm. Your intent behind the wheel is going to be the outcome of that vehicle, right? So you need to know who you are and what your intent is. And one way I frame this, because the whole Seattle thing is, my intent, I said to myself in my head that day when I was heading into town or heading into Seattle, was I am not overseas working. I'm in America. Like, I'm in my home. Like, I'm driving to the city where I go, I don't want to take an American life. If I have to, I will. If it comes to that decision's made, done, check that box. But if I can find another way, and this was the key thing, was if I can find another way, I will. And I left that there in my mind. I left that decision framework in my mind, like you make a bed, right? You come back to it, so that if a situation pops up and that decision needs to be done, it's already made. Got it.
Right.
Because my intent as a person is not to do those things. I hope and I try to act with compassion in most things I do. But then again, everyone wears a different persona based off what's going on. So that's what I try to lead with. And you asked something earlier, I don't know if I answered clearly, if I had anyone to lean on in this past year and the situations I'm going through. Because I was opening my mouth, I got to a point where I had to get, quite literally speaking, I had to get my face up and out of the closet. I was sleeping in a closet for like 6 months. I had to say something. I had to start talking to people. I had to do that. I was stunned, and still am, on how many people were like, dude, me too. What can I do? How can I help? Let's talk. One buddy, I had been blowing him off on the phone and everything, and it's because I just didn't want to get into it, and there was no way I could get around it. And then finally got to the point, it's like, I got to answer the phone. I got to talk to him. I was like, hey, dude, this is what's going on. And his right out of his mouth, okay, well, what's the plan? I was like, well, I need to do these two things. I need to find a place to live and get a better job. He's like, all right, move in. Just immediately right off the bat. Yeah. And I was just like, wow. And then having to reach out to companies, because I had work I had to do, like on YouTube and everything. There hasn't been a single company or person in those companies that I've worked with been like, we're going to cancel this, or we're not going to do that, or we're not going to move forward. Like, every single one of them, take the time you need, and when you're ready and get back up on your feet, let us know, and we'll start from there. And yeah, because I was opening my mouth.
Yeah.
And it, in a way, it kind of would feel good to know that I could come out ahead and take care of all those things with all that going on inside of me without saying anything. But then it got to a point where it's like, that's only leading me down one road. And I had to realize, like, hey, I don't want that road. I choose that road. It doesn't feel like I want that road, but I want that road. So open my mouth.
Was that scary to open your mouth? Was that scary to speak up to somebody?
It's different based off the person.
Yeah.
Right. So,
and I'm sure trust.
Well,
like
yeah. So it got
that.
to a point where it's like I started thinking of trust not necessarily differently, but deeper, like just way deeper. I've always been very stringent. Like, if I am going to be with someone or be tight with someone, right, I need to be able to trust you with my vulnerability. Like I'm saying, hey, take my heart, here it is, and I hope you don't crush it. And then I had to get into like really specific definitions on words, so I knew how to speak to myself and analyze what was going on. So like one of them I figured out was the difference between vulnerability and weakness. Weakness, I have no capability to attack or defend or have offense. I don't. I am just an exposed thing to be destroyed. Vulnerability is I have all the capability to attack and defend, but I'm opening myself up and allowing trust in you that you're not going to.
Yeah, it's a decision rather than a reaction.
Yeah. You know? So when I think about that in terms of like, okay, who do I have to tell things to? It's like, I don't necessarily tailor it, but I will omit details. Like, hey, I got X amount going on. I'm not doing too well. I need to like look out for myself. Others just like, and then they say, oh, I'm going through this too. And it's like, okay, now maybe I can help them. Maybe we can help them. Let's exchange these ideas just like me as an instructor will do to a shooter. Like, and that's how I relate to it. And I think it's because it makes it easier for me to go ahead and do as opposed to emotional dump, right?
Yeah.
So because I opened my mouth, I had a lot of people to lean on. I am out here on the East Coast because I opened my mouth to a friend of mine, and he's like, great, got a job, go do it.
Yeah, what did that look like? I've never had to move across the country. I've moved my family one time, and it was only about a 30-minute drive, and that sucked. So I want to know, what was that like going from Washington? Because you also picked, of all of these different states you could pick, like you didn't pick Oregon.
Dude, I was trying to go to Mongolia. My goal, this was my goal. It was open-ended. Go as far away as possible where I can still pay my bills.
Yeah.
All right. Mongolia, I was like, I can go be an eagle hunter. Like just ride those short, badass horses and just hunt wolves with an eagle. I don't think that pays too well. Well, I called a friend, and man, I met him last year right before SHOT Show, and I'm not going to say his name or anything, but there's no reason why this guy would want to be friends with me, but we hit it off. And I was like, hey, man, this is what's going on. And I knew because of his background, because of the how common it is to have those things happen in the community he comes from and the community I come from, I knew he would get it. I knew he probably, unfortunately, had experienced it or been with a lot of good friends I had. So I was like, this is what I'm trying to do. And he was like, all right, I will keep an ear out. And this is, and a couple weeks later, he's like, hey, got something this. So I was like, okay, got on the phone, job has worked out, and I'm going to leave this date. Not going to lie, I was trying to avoid the summer over here.
Oh, yeah.
So I waited, and I had to anyways. There was a couple things I had to make sure to knock out and line up prior to, but what I did is I took everything to my father's, loaded it into his shop, and I packed my vehicle full of guns, ammo, books, and drones, and a couple clothes, and I left. Like I'm done. I packed my Jeep from top to bottom, all the way to the front seat. I was sitting in a little cockpit, and
I've never experienced that.
Yeah.
Every time we film, every time,
right? Yeah, and I had experience packing that thing. I've done 20-person ranges out of it. So I drove cross country. The first day I did 15 hours. The second day was 19 hours, and then I stayed a few days at a friend's in North Texas, and then I drove like another 6 or 7 hours. Stayed a week in Shreveport, and I cannot even express how much that week meant to me. The Michelex took me in for a week, and
that's wild.
Hanging out with Jerry and his wife, and then Lena and everything. She's the one who invited me out. Like, that girl is so emotionally intelligent. It is intimidating. Like, especially in my state at that time, I was intimidated as hell. And all she did was she showed more care and love to me in such what you would think of as a normal way than I'd ever experienced. And it was scary. But then after that, I had like a 12, 13-hour drive north, and it was quite a ride, because through this whole thing, I got nothing but hours of sitting in the car just running through everything.
What was that like driving? You packed up, you decided, hey, I'm going, and now you have what amounts to a couple of days of driving. What was going through your mind?
Man, heartbreak. Like, what are these things that I have to do to try to heal? Like, how is that going to look? another thing, like, hey, try to set up the next year to have a life to look forward to. And it was one of the things Lena said to me that really helped out was, your purpose right now is to find your purpose, and that's okay. Like, because I didn't feel like it was okay to not have a purpose. But when she said that, it was like, that makes sense, right? And so driving and having all that time, like I routinely, I do this and people call me psycho for it. I'll drive. I've done 12-hour drives, not a single thing playing, no podcast, no anything.
Wow.
I'll just drive in silence because I'm just so in my head and just working stuff out, right? And there were some of those days that I did that because I had to. And I can't tell you a lot of like what the scenery looked like in some places because I wasn't really paying attention to it. But I can tell you that from when I left to when I arrived a few days, it was like a 2-week time period because I'd stayed a week in Louisiana, to when I arrived in, where I'm at in Virginia, I was already better. I had removed myself from a place of nothing but terrible reminders, and I had taken control to place myself in another environment where I had the emotional availability to take care of what I needed to, because I was too much to take care of while taking care of others too. So it was different, and it still is. Like, I get caught up in it all the time. Like, I got to make sure to remember to do this. I got to, take myself on walks. I got to do that stuff. Yeah.
The one thing that I think of as I'm sitting here is the fact that it's constant work.
It never ends.
It's not. I think people, you correct me if you think I'm wrong and give some input, but I think people think that we go through life and at some point there's a finish line. Obviously we all die at some point, right? But there's like this fictional line that is their end objective that you cross. But I've never in my life gotten to a point where I'm like, hey, I finally hit every objective. I don't know that. No. I don't know that I will, because I'm growing as a person. Yeah. I'm constantly learning things about who I am and who I can be. And you tap new potential. So you get into these situations where maybe it's a new skill, maybe it's learning a new thing about yourself. And it's like, for me, this last year, one of the things I've really been trying to do more and more of is be what I would call a servant leader. And I've talked about this a lot as well. And that, when I look at strong leaders and people that other people are willing to follow, there's always certain traits that are consistent with those servant leaders. One is they embrace delayed gratification. That's just the reality of it. And you can take that from my lens with being a business owner. And sometimes that means not necessarily doing the things that you'd like to do with your business in the moment now because you're focused so far on an end goal. But then it's also understanding and caring about people at a level that most people won't even take the time to do. But that ability to, I guess, see the fact that you're not a work that is going to be finished, but then being okay with that fact, because that's also kind of scary. Yeah.
So like this, my best example to explain to you is when I started opening my mouth and talking to, friends and mentors and loved ones and everything, at my age, I'm 31, we both are, right? Yeah. I talked to a few guys that I really look up to that are older, and they're like, dude, like, this is how old I am, and look at what I'm doing. Like, I'm now living my best life. And I went through the same stuff that when I was your age, and I felt the same way. But look at what I'm doing now. Because in my moment, it's like, my world's ending. I don't know what to do. I lost my purpose. I lost the thing that I was trying, that made me feel fulfilled and all this stuff. So it was like, it wasn't necessarily like, I don't believe you, but I don't feel that because I'm in the middle of it. So then it just makes you think like, oh, because they kept working.
Yeah.
Because they felt like they were going down the same way, but they chose the other way, right? And they kept working and grinding and doing it. So what I think about it, like you say, is like, we're not a sculpture. You get done, you hit a point with a sculpture, you're done.
Yeah.
A statue, it's gonna stay there. We have them in Rome for thousands of years, whatever. That's not true with us. Like the thing I think about this often, I hate doing laundry. And because of that, I feel like I'm always doing laundry.
Yeah,
It is
it's
constantly
perspective.
happening, and it always goes.
Yeah.
And this last like several months being out where I am now, I never did work behind the camera. I played around with it, and I knew I had to get good at it as far as I needed to know to be able to do my job better in front of. The last 3 months, it's like, well, I guess I'm just going to get more into my creative side, from the reading I love, the writing I've loved and haven't done because I was emotionally congested for years, to video and photo. Like, I'm used to being in front. I'm going to do it behind. I'm going to get into that. So now I'm way deeper into the photo, way deeper into video and all the editing, and I am rapidly progressing, I feel, because single-minded retardedness going after it, and I got nothing else to do, but I'm exploring that. And the thing is like, that's another process of personal growth that I'm never going to be finished doing. Like, I showed up and you guys tell me about this time code thing, like, so I don't got to manually sync everything. That's awesome. To the personal work doing on yourself, like, there is no finish line. There is no beach in Cabo with Mai Tais that you're just going to chill, because how long can you really be there, right?
Right. Yeah, and people think that, I think it's a couple things. I think that we're told as our culture that, one, going on this pursuit of self-betterment is too hard. It's too risky. It's ironic because our culture in words will say, be your best self. But what they're saying is accept you in the exact state of what you are. And sometimes we need to be okay looking at ourselves and being like, I'm kind of a crappy person. You know, I kind of suck. And
6 months ago, I was face first in the closet wanting to kill myself. Do you
what
really think I would have looked at myself and be like, this is the best version of me?
Right.
No.
So what I want to unpack for people, and what I desperately hope in some way through what we do with the podcast, we can help answer some of these questions for people, because what took you from that point to then continuing to where you are now? Because there's an obvious difference. You know, I have friends in my past who have committed suicide too. I think more people know of somebody who has than what most people realize. You know,
I think more people know about, I have experience with that, than people being murdered, or just people just dying of natural causes around them. Like, it's unfortunate. Like, and especially coming from Marine Corps infantry, like our community, we have it. It's bad all the time.
Yeah.
And I still hear about friends that I served with years later, like, hey man, he just popped himself. Like,
so what took you from that, you know, feeling in that dark spot, to now saying, hey, I have to commit to analyzing this and go down this journey that might be hard and dark. And honestly, I think that's the part that culture's missing, is they think that you get to the point where you say, I need to get better, and you say it, you know, you say those words. A lot of people will say those words, but then you start on the journey and it gets dark. And then people say, oh crap, I need to get away from this.
Well, I think the first thing to recognize is it's not going to just continually get better. Like, it's going to have ups and downs. There are good days and there are bad days. There are days like, I don't want to leave my bed. I don't want to get up and go to work. And there are other days where it's like, man, I feel the best that I ever have. It's going to go up and down. When I was at that point, I had to recognize, I don't want to do this. But all I can feel is that is the only way out. But I don't want that. But I feel like I do. Like, there's a very different thing. So maybe this sounds a little loony, but I think of it like this with myself. I pay attention to my intuition, my gut feelings, more than anything else. And there's science behind that, but I think of it as your gut and your heart and your brain. Like, you got three things going on there, right? And my brain, I try to be very logical, is analyzing. My emotions are old, dude. They take a long time to move through things, and I feel things. I always think I feel them deeper, but then I always have to pay attention to recognize, like, I don't know what others are actually feeling, right?
Yeah.
But my gut is what I was relying on. It's like, I know that this thing I'm going through, because of the circumstance I am in, is not of my own making. I know that I would not have wanted this. I would not have wanted things to go here. But they're here. So I have to recognize that. Just like I said about those feelings, I need to recognize it's right next to me. And it's like I have this desire for these things I want to do in life, and that's a hard road, but to me right now they don't even matter. And that really sucks because I actually really care about it. So what got me through was, it's going to sound stupid, boot camp stories. At boot camp, the easiest way to get through is chow to chow, Sunday to Sunday. Like, just make it to the afternoon, make it to the evening. And you know what? Maybe you make it to the morning. And that's okay to do that for a while, you know. And it's like fighting addiction. And not all addiction is substances, right? It's like, I'm not going to do this thing today. I know that. We'll see about tomorrow. We'll, keep battling it. I wanted to fight for the life I wanted. I want to explore the life my passion just craves to explore. And a lot of that has love. It's a lot of love and compassion. And I wasn't getting any of that, and all of it was stripped from me. So it's like, I need to get that for myself now. And it never felt right that it felt stolen. So I'm face deep in this closet, and I'm hallucinating, and I think these things are going on, but they're not actually happening. And I wake up after hours of this, and I was just like, so I'm in the nightmare. Well, at least I know where I am. I'm not lost, right? And then it was something Lena said to me, too. I had a conversation with her, and she told me, when you're at your lowest, it is easiest to work on yourself because you are never closer to your core. And so when I think about that, it's like, all right, I'm nut to butt with me. Like, I am at the, I'm at the command center of myself and to figure this out.
Yeah.
So I started to figure out things about control. I can't control anything, but I control myself. I now have the discipline to control myself. So it was literally these little things just chipping this block away. And it was never one single big revelation.
Yeah.
And I recognized that the atmosphere that I was put in, that was created around me, was exactly the atmosphere I was raised with. And that angered me because I had put myself in that situation. And so I was like, I don't want this. I beat this once before. Actually, technically twice before. I'm going to do it again. But right now, to be quite honest, where I'm at in my life, I don't feel like I can beat it again. And that terrifies me. So what do I have to do? I have to make damn sure that that does not happen again. Because I would love to be kicking around grandkids one day, right?
Yeah.
And I would love to see straight out of Matthew McConaughey, he said this in one of his speeches, like, who am I in 10 years? That's who I want to be, right? So it was just chipping away, and being very self-critical. And one of the things that I've talking to a lot of my mentors and friends is like, they don't know anyone more self-aware. And I was like, I'm not self-aware enough. Look at the position I'm in, right? So that, to me, that's what I would say. It was just, I need to figure this out. And it kept this, I need to figure it out, which chipping away that block is getting me where I'm going.
Yeah, and I like to think of it like if you're, polishing a gemstone from like a rough rock. If you would look at how a jeweler would handle making a stone into a shape, there's going to be a period of that raw material's existence where there's going to be some pretty traumatic blows.
Yeah.
They're going to take that chisel and drive that freaking thing through that rock and break it rough. It will fall, pieces will crumble, some of it gets lost entirely. But then there's pieces of that happen with a very gentle brush, where there's a soft cloth just kind of wiping away some of the grime. And then ultimately at some point, you start to see that something is taking form. And again, I see people that I think we're just so lied to, because that first big chisel blow where we just have a piece of us just go poof and blow away, culture says, holy cow, that's not the right thing.
It's too extreme. It's too
chaotic. You're hurting yourself. That's not what you need. You need to find safety.
Well, look at it like this. Here's a good juxtaposition. Look at 9/11 and then look at 9/12, the day after.
Yeah.
Like flags everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone rallied because someone attacked our family of Americans. Then you look at COVID. we attacked from within.
Yeah.
Because we were attacking from within, right? That was a big blow versus another big blow. And look at the completely different reactions to it.
The results are very different. Now, I was in 4th grade, I guess, 9/11, but that's old enough to remember.
I remember it perfectly.
Very clearly remember seeing the footage.
I remember going to school and all the kids saying, oh, it's this country, it's that country, it's this country. I remember my grandmother ran in. I was getting ready for school.
Yeah.
She ran in, grabbed me to the living room and showed me the TV. And I saw planes hitting towers. I don't know the World Trade Centers. I know of New York from movies. Like, I'm a child. But I recognize something bad is happening to my country. And I remember very clearly going into school that day because my dad was working at the Portland International Airport that day. He got locked down. He couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Because they shut down all flights. And we grew up in that. So we grew up in a time, regardless of those who were there for it or those who were for the war or against, regardless of that, majority were pulling together for each other.
Yeah.
Very different reaction. But then we also are dealing with, to be quite honest, a different type of fear.
Yeah.
Like,
and
I would much rather go into a gunfight than fight a disease.
Yeah.
I know how to handle that.
The disease is scary. Like, the thing is, and that's why it was the perfect storm. Yeah. Because it's an enemy you can't physically see. Yeah. You can't put a face on it and say, hey, rally around this one thing and end this. Yeah. And the worst part of that is also an opportunity for anyone to push their version of the propaganda to try to control the populace in the way that they see fit. And that, again, people might be like, oh, conspiracy theorists. It's like, people are opportunists. People that want power are opportunists. Sometimes they will create their opportunity, and sometimes they'll just react to an open door. Yeah. You think about anything, even in nature.
Dude, look at me. Look what I did.
Yeah.
There was a door open, an opportunity, and I pressed advantage. Yeah. I completely get it. Integrity, honor, an ethos, a code to live by, like morality and everything, those will guide which way it goes. But then again, that's different per person. So you have someone who, like you're saying, wants power and they see an opportunity. If all those things I just named off line up for that, they're going to do it, man.
Right.
I mean, yeah, it sucks, but it's never going to be a utopia. And America is the great experiment.
Yeah.
And it's just like this, what I was saying earlier about international relations and everything, it's the nation and the person. Just like we are always seeking personal growth, we are always growing and developing. There's never an end point. So is our country. So is the world. Like, there's never an end point. We're always trying to improve. But you constantly have to make sure to self-analyze, look back into your past, see where these things are coming from, and keep those reminders. So you want to look at something like that, tearing down statues in the U.S. of people in the history. Regardless of what that history is, there's a reason it's there.
Yeah.
To keep those reminders so we don't repeat the same mistakes.
So what does it look like in this country to revitalize culture?
Family. Dude, I remember seeing black and white videos of the president's message. I want to say it was Reagan, I'm not sure, saying, hey, we need to have a bit more physically fit country. These are the standards we're going to put out in our public schools. This is what, some things to do in the family home, like things to go over, talk about. I think it starts at the family. Now, I don't really get into religion and everything. It's not a thing for me. I have my own feelings and thoughts on it. But one thing about it is it does put everyone on the same sheet of music.
Yeah.
Which one they're, what religion they subscribe to. It does put everyone on the same sheet of music. And generally speaking, if you look across a majority of religions from whatever time frame or culture, they all have the same basic tenets. And if you look back in the history of America, we were founded as a religious sanctuary from England.
Yeah. And
so there were certain tenets we all at that time agreed upon, and you look at through several hundred years, that was still the thing. And now you look at it now, it's not. But it doesn't have to be religion. It can be, I was Marine Corps, right? It can be the Espiritu Corps of the Marine Corps. If you want to do it with your local YMCA or whatever like that, it's whatever you subscribe to that builds that family culture, strength and cohesion, because that just spreads. Just like I said with the whole social media thing, you never know how far those ripples will go.
Yeah. And I like to I like to think of it this way. We're all very different, and each person is their own individual. And it's important that we are not just cookie cutter versions of each other. But in order to even have a culture, there has to be a certain foundational agreement.
Yeah.
And to us in this country,
Second Amendment.
yeah, exactly. But the Bill of Rights was where we laid out, hey, these are the things that we hold as human rights that can't be forsaken. Now, obviously, they've been forsaken a lot. They've been forsaken muchly.
I recently just went to D.C. for my very first time, like not even a month ago, right? And I went in there, my cousin and I are walking around, and I went and saw the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, and Declaration, right? And and I'm getting up there, I'm walking into the rotunda, and it is quieter than any church I've ever been into. It is quieter than any library I've stepped in. And I was just like, holy crap, like, better watch my mouth and talk really quiet right now because I can be kind of loud. And I'm really excited. And I see all these people, and we're all sitting here amazed looking at these documents. I'm like, me and these people, or these people and each other, could all completely disagree on how to live life, on what to do. But we're all standing here looking at the foundation documents of our nation in complete awe and wonder. And that is amazing because they were written hundreds of years ago, and we're sitting here like, I have to revere this so much. Even though these are behind protective glass, I cannot speak because it might mess it up.
Yeah.
Like,
and think about the fact that you had people that said, I desire a better culture, so they were willing to do the work on a personal level. People forget that. And that's why I'm a huge proponent, and I know you are as well, that us and inside of our lives, inside of our circles, when we focus in on ourselves and we invest, we make deposits into our account of discipline, in the self-awareness, in things like communication, that to me is how we win this cultural battle. And that's how you eliminate weakness from our culture. Because think of it this way. If you see me succeeding, let's just say that happens and I can be an example for people and I can pour into the people around me, but I'm consistent with the ethics, with the things that I'm doing. And I have this tangible record of saying, okay, these actions, they're hard, but they're consistent and I've done it. And then here is this result. You will motivate people to take that first step.
Straight from discipline.
Right.
So the Niccolo Machiavelli, have you ever heard of him? He wrote a book called The Prince. He was several hundred years ago back in Italy. But the book, in summary, it's talking about, he's giving advice to a young prince on how to be a good prince. And he's saying, in essence, at least what I drew from it, no one reads the same book, right? That in order to be a good prince or leader of any kind or a good person, you have to have these core beliefs you stick to. But every circumstance, every person, every situation you come across, you might have to handle completely different. If you have to deal with a scoundrel, deal with him like a scoundrel. If you have to deal with a king, deal with him like a king. Stay true to yourself, but you might have to do that. And when I think about that, and I relate it to, like, you know, every person gets a different version of me based off of what they're giving me, right? And that's completely fine. That's absolutely okay, especially when you're trying to do the personal growth and you're trying to influence the culture in the direction that you feel is good. But you can't press too hard, right? Just like we don't want people pressing too hard upon us on something we disagree with. It's like, okay, well, now this is where the respect comes in. And if I'm in your house, I respect your rules. You're in my house, respect my rules. And to me, that's lost upon us. And I think about it in business too. Like, say I'm coming up here to your place, right? I'm in your house. I'm going to respect your rules. You say I'm free to go get whatever food. I'm still going to ask, man, because right? That's the way I look at it. So however anyone wants to run their business, their country, whatever, like, unless it's like human rights atrocities, right?
Yeah.
But
and that goes back to that, you know, I think human nature's funny, but I think that humans have the capabilities and understandings at a basic level of right and wrong. And now I think you can be conditioned out of that. I think that
absolutely.
You could have generations raised completely disregarding any ethical values, and the result of that will be people that have no understanding of moral compass. But at the same time, we do have some level of understanding, you know.
Well, I mean, so this might sound a little ridiculous. Like I mentioned earlier, my favorite book series, Tarzan. The book series written by Edgar Rice Burroughs in the early 1900s, right? Turn of the century and all that. But when you read through the books, there's 25 in the original writing, you can get a strong sense of the culture of that time, for better or worse. There's some things in there that these days people would probably just lose their head over. But there was a very strong sense of culture within it, and what it was is a sense of right and wrong. Now, Tarzan is a man literally born and raised in the jungle without civilized culture to affect him. But he is still, and I know this is fiction, I get that, but he still has this sense of right and wrong in him, whether it be hereditary or just something within himself that says, hey, these things are not good, these things are bad. Like, I'm not going to do this. And I can think of a couple different instances in the series, but it makes me think about it like, okay, if we strip all of this stuff away, all this finery, everything, we're back to, just beating clubs in a cave, what do we have left? What is going to be true still? Humans are still going to be humans. We are still, we got to this point in history, whether it be with our nations and growth and everything, because I think more good than bad. Yes, war breeds, it is the most natural competition. And you find that in the animal kingdom and and us, obviously we're part of that, and it breeds excellence in a lot of ways. But then you look at what goes on in peacetime too, and the different things people do. I think it outweighs more. At least, what I hope I do, right? Or else, what am I sticking around for?
Right. So the last question that I want to throw at you, and I have a feeling that we're gonna have more podcast episodes going forward because I
just run my mouth.
I think no, it's good stuff. So the exciting thing for me is learning new people, learning about new people, understanding who you are, and trying to paint a picture for everybody else as to who you are, but also use our platform to educate people and make them realize, like I've already said, they have more power than what they realize. We have more of an ability to affect changes that we know we need to see than what we realize. But what I'm curious about is, we're going to pretend you're a doctor right now. You're going to write the
whoa, you got to pay
prescription.
Me. You got to pay me to do an ad for you.
The Crossman there, the pellet pistol. That's right. But you're a doctor. You're trying to make an analysis. You're trying to determine what the disease is and what you're going to prescribe to your patient. So let's look at culture as if we have our patient here, our society. What are we going to prescribe? How do we, what are you going to write on that slip so that we can better ourselves going forward?
Oh man, that's a tough one. That is
well, I left the hard one for the end, of course.
That's going to keep me up at night. First of all, I am in no position to prescribe anything to anyone. I don't even take Advil.
Well, and full clarity here, all metaphorical, what are we, what's the ingredients of this culture that we can pour in and ultimately affect people around us?
I believe that, and maybe this is speaking my own truth, that if we used understanding and compassion more, those two things together, because if I understand you, but I have no compassion, I don't give a flying fuck. If I have compassion for you, but I don't understand, I'm still going to do whatever I need or whatever I want. But if I understand you and I'm feeling for you, then I am more likely to help, to be there for, to allow you to do whatever that I need be done by you. But I think people act rashly. I think people are too focused inwardly. Well, and again, double-edged sword is focus inwardly as far as introspection and to realize who you are and be self-aware. But you are doing that not just for yourself, but so you can act upon the world better in a more influential and good way.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I have to learn with myself, is to be more understanding of me, to have more compassion for me. And then I can use that, because if I have understanding and compassion for me and I'm feeling that more, I am feeling that more towards others too. And it's really hard. It is really hard, especially when you allow others, or others just pull you down to their level. So like the Seattle incident, I didn't want to take a life if I didn't have to, because I understood I was going into a place surrounded by people that were all doing things that I didn't agree with, and were more than likely in a viewpoint of political or whatever feeling that I didn't agree with. That's fine. I understand. I believe in the First Amendment too.
Yeah.
But the difference from violent to nonviolent was clear. But I had compassion, because these people, regardless of what people say, because I've had this a lot, saying they're communists or not part of our country, like, they're Americans. They have a different viewpoint than you. I had compassion in that. So I think those two things would help a lot. And remembering that we have the foundation of Bill of Rights, the Constitution, the Declaration and all that. I think remembering that too is also a big deal, because that flag and the nation we live in, the nation it represents, is the one thing that unites us in America. And it's the great experiment. It always will be an experiment. And what do most experiments do? They just keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful stuff. And like I said, I plan to dive into this again with you. But we filmed today on the range. We have a video that'll come out, and we'll post that up on the TA Targets YouTube. So
completely different tone than this. Too.
Yeah, but everybody should check it out. People should check it out. Give it a look when it goes live. But expect more content, I'm sure, at some point from us teaming up together. And on that note, where can people find you? What should they be looking for?
So I love that we're doing this podcast, by the way, because I want to launch one in third and fourth quarter. So I'm just soaking it up, what I want to do, how I want to do it, learning more of the stuff. And this is the exact kind of stuff I'd love to do. So you can find me on Instagram, Weapon Snatcher. Pull up my primary and secondary account. And then YouTube is Weapon Snatcher 2. I'll get that back up and running probably the second quarter of this year. And then weaponsnatcher.com. You can find the training classes, any information, some products. And when I get the podcast up and running, and a couple other things, you'll find it up there too. So for now, that's the three main places.
It's awesome. And I appreciate you coming out. Glad and honored to have you out here. I'm glad you said yes, because I know there's always a risk when I ask somebody to come out and hang out and film, record with us.
Driving in the middle of the woods in a cabin with a couple of dudes.
It's like, dude, I'm like, hey, come to the cabin. It's in the boonies up here.
Sounds great.
I'm glad you were able to come. I think it's really cool what you're doing. I think it's impressive. I think that you're humble, but also just to remind you to take a second and look at the impact that you're having. I think that it's hard for us sometimes to do that because it feels weird. It feels disingenuous to do that. But I think that you should look at that because you're impacting people around you. And thank you for that.
I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, in this time of life, it's hard to feel like I'm having any kind of good impact when I feel like I'm only impacting negatively upon myself. So...
And it at times can be hard to see the impact that we're having. But I can tell you just from watching the comments on your social pages, content that you're putting out, where your head and your heart is, that you are impacting people, and it's cool to see. So,
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, man.
I appreciate it. It was an honor.
Thank you for listening to the Exodus Companies podcast. Consider supporting us by paying this episode forward. Share this episode with your friends and family. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow our social media pages. Subscribe to our newsletter for inside information, pre-released blogs, and much more. And consider our apparel so you can support what we do. And in return, our apparel will help you speak values and truth in the world around you. Join the Exodus. We will see you in the next episode.